my pleasure to introduce someone I've known since she was this high, Dr. Sue Maxam, who has just gone through this program. And my first encounter with Sue was like an explosion of joy. And she has just carried that through. It is because of Dr. Sue Maxam that we have seminar EDU 889, Education and Sustainability, and it's just been a phenomenal success and an important seminar. But she has been a leader in thought and action, and her dissertation dealing with autistic students on campus is a must read. It's so important. It's added to the research. But tonight she's going to talk to us about some of her history and the change that she has been within the world. And Sue, I turn it over to you. It is absolutely my pleasure to have you speaking tonight.
Thank you so much, and I have to say it's an honor to be selected to speak to all of you, and I'm so excited about tonight. As Constance said, I'm a 2012 graduate of the EDD program at Union, and as you all know, Union has the best doctoral program in the nation because it's based on social justice principles, and it has the most competent, caring, and amazing professors and dean. So it's wonderful to be here. Now, my mission in life has always been to be the change that I wanted to see in this world. So as an undergraduate and a graduate student, I lived in Costa Rica, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Peru, Bolivia, Panama, and several other Latin American countries. So if it was a war-torn, poverty-stricken country, I was there volunteering in shanty towns, refugee camps, prisons, orphanages, and so on. And I even worked with female political prisoners who were incarcerated indefinitely for secretly going to college classes at the University of San Salvador, which in the mid-'80s was considered by the government to be subversive. In addition to that, ever since I met my husband a number of years ago, every few years we go to Kenya through his nonprofit organization, which installs solar lighting in rural schools. And much of today's presentation is based on our work there. So let me see if I can do this correctly. I want to start by asking you all a question. They can write in the boxes, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. So a couple of people, if you can just tell me in a few words what a typical day is for you. I know you're thinking, what does that have to do with being the change we want to see in the world? But it will relate. But I'm hoping some people actually write. All right, now I'm confused. Nobody's writing? Typical day? Huh. Can I not see what people are writing, Constance?
You should. Do you see the chat box below you?
Yeah, but I see nothing in it. It says the chat history has been cleared, and I imagine everybody on this call has a typical day.
It's coming. They're coming in right now. I'll read some as they come forward.
Oh, okay.
Paris Carter says, are you seeing something now?
No, I see nothing. It just says,
We all see it.
okay, let's see. How can I get out of?
Well, let me read it to you, Sue. Paris Carter, typical day, administering programs at a university. David Travis, shower, eat, work, eat, watch TV, eat, sleep. That sounds like David.
That sounds like my, oh, I can see it now. It just popped up. I don't know what happened.
There you go.
Okay. Yep, like yours. Stress, stress, and more stress. Okay. Meditation, meeting with friends, research, rehearsal. Oh, that sounds like a nice life. Listening to university friends and helping them to continue achieving their, oh, that's so wonderful. Administrator and teacher church at a college. Okay. Thank you all for sharing. Now, there are 7 billion people in the world. I want a couple of guesses now as to how many of them live in poverty. You didn't know that you were going to have to work during this presentation, did you all? Okay, the majority for... Okay. Oh, wow. Big guesses. All right. So Jan is writing. I'll wait until Jan puts hers up, and then I'll tell you the answer. Oh, Jan stopped writing. Okay. All right. It's 3 billion. Oh, there we go. 80%. 3 billion people live in poverty, and that is either moderate or extreme poverty where they don't even have enough to eat in order to go through their day. So what I want to do is talk about a typical day around the world. And I'm specifically focusing on Africa right now. So we'll start with northern Uganda. For the past 25 years or so, 1.67 million people in northern Uganda, and that's 80% of their population, has been displaced and live in squalid conditions due to the brutal ongoing conflict there. The Lord's Resistance Army has abducted tens of thousands of children, forcing them into combat and sexual slavery, and that's a fear that they live with daily. Then we have Somalia. They had a new government installed in 2012 that has witnessed over 2 decades of conflict, violence, human rights violations, sexual violence, and natural disasters, all of which have triggered repeated waves of displacement. So in the first half of 2013 alone, about 1.5 million people, and that's more than 16% of their population, were forced to flee their homes, most of whom now live in dire conditions even still. 5 million people throughout the country don't even have access to clean water or health care. Over the past 2 decades, they've had wars, a collapsed health system, and that's made it one of the most dangerous places in the world for a woman to give birth. And that has resulted in 1 in 6 women dying during childbirth, 1 in 7 children dying before the age of 1, and 1 in 5 dying before the age of 5. Horrific. In Kenya, we have 40% unemployment. 1.6 million adults in Kenya live with HIV, and there are currently 1.1 million AIDS orphans. And at the same time, the United States is building a $1.4 billion military base as opposed to giving them aid in other areas. And then in Central African Republic, we have 4.6 million people who are reeling from the multiple crises that they face there. Food insecurity, the spread of disease, mass looting, indiscriminate killing, and all of that is due to the failed state, the power struggles, the spillover conflicts from neighboring countries, interfaith conflicts between the Muslims and the Christians, and lack of awareness about these issues, all of which is made it one of the world's most forgotten crises. I'm sure hardly any of you have heard about what's going on in Central African Republic. And unfortunately, many times, if it doesn't have some sort of an interest from the United States in terms of oil or whatever, very often we don't pay as much attention as we could or should. Oh, sorry, my mouse is not working. Okay. Now, on a more global level, female genital mutilation and cutting occurs every 10 seconds. 39 million girls in the developing world are denied access to basic education. Sex trafficking, forced prostitution, gender-based violence, and maternal mortality all needlessly claim 1 woman every 90 seconds. 1 out of 3 children in the poorest countries won't live beyond the age of 3. 8 million people die each year because they're too poor to stay alive. That's 21,000 people a day, 1 dying every 4 seconds. Meanwhile, in the news, what do we hear about? Not that. We hear about what Kim Kardashian is wearing or not wearing, what Miley Cyrus is doing that's causing some sort of an uproar, but not the deaths of all of these people who are throughout the world having to live like this and die like this. As of 2013, 1.2 billion people live in extreme poverty. That means, again, like I said earlier, they don't even have enough food to eat in order to stay alive. And usually $2.50 a day is what the poorest people live on. Yet, the world spends $3 trillion a year on military expenditures, with the United States spending about $1.1 trillion of that amount. So now that I've thoroughly depressed everybody, we'll go into more exciting things. Now, all of the above-mentioned statistics about injustices are alarming, but what we often forget is that these stats represent actual people. And for this reason, most of the rest of my presentation will focus on my experiences in Kenya so that you can hear about and see the problems as well as discuss some of the solutions. And just as some background, until recently, my husband was the founder of a nonprofit organization called JUA, which means light, and they installed solar lighting in rural Kenyan schools so that we could go up there every few years with a group of volunteers and do the installations. And on a recent trip, we partnered with another nonprofit organization called Orphans International, which was founded by Anthony Asai. He's one of my husband's former students in Kenya when he was in the Peace Corps. In fact, he found Anthony throughout his entire high school and college years, and Anthony then started a nonprofit, which is the Orphans International. That's Anthony's way of giving back to the world because of the opportunities afforded to him. Our trip this particular year was to build several new classrooms for a school that was serving orphans, many AIDS orphans, as well as children from poverty-stricken families. Now, the next few slides, I want to just show you some of the children who attended the school that we were working with. And again, it's nice to put a face to the statistics. Now, just so that you all know, very often the only pair of clothes that these children have in these countries, and in particular in this area of Kenya, is their school uniform. And as you can see, this was a hand-me-down from many of this child's other brothers or community members. It's all he has to wear, and he owns no shoes whatsoever. But this is what he comes to school in every day. Just a couple of more pictures. Again, you'll notice that the vast majority of them do not have shoes at all. But, you know, they're wonderful children, and they have so much to offer the world, so it kills me that they're having to live like this. Now, a typical rural Kenyan school has about 65 children in each class. It's sort of reminiscent of the one-room schoolhouse in the 19th and 20th centuries where children of all ages were in there and they kind of had to teach to pretty much everybody. And they're all dealing with horrific family lives. They don't have a blackboard, as you can see. There's hardly any paper. The pencils that they use have to last them several years. It was unbelievable what they were writing with. I mean, if you looked in my couch cushion, and probably a number of yours, you'd find about 20 or 30 pens and pencils stuffed inside of them. But these children just have that one pencil that'll last them years and years. And this is the school that we were working in. You'll see that they don't really have doors. There's no windows. It's just these little openings that have no windows in them. And these little gullies, until recently, are what they went to the bathroom in during the day. Again, very sad. Oh, sorry, my mouse is not working very well. Now, if you think about the meetings that you have, you know, either with your students if you're working in an educational institution or in whatever place you're working at, usually in the summertime we're in cool, air-conditioned places. Their assemblies are in the blazing heat, and usually it's in the high 90s there. And they have to take their desks outside and just sit on the desks or on the ground. That day we were celebrating the completion of the 2 new schoolrooms. I should say that if anybody has questions while I'm presenting, feel free to just write something in the little box there. Now this on the left, I'm looking at the pointer. I'm hoping I can do the pointer thing. Yes, I can. Move it over. This is their outhouse. They were so proud of this. This is an outhouse that has 2 little doors on it, and it was for all 650 kids as well as the 10 teachers who go to this school. And again, this was this brand new invention in quotes for them, and they were so excited to show us this wonderful outhouse. When we went to the bathroom in there, of course, they were all trying to look through the peepholes and everything because they were Americans going to the bathroom. But this is what they have to live with, and I have to say they were not complaining whatsoever. Now on the right, let me move the pointer over. this is the kitchen. That's what they used to cook for the 200 plus orphans that were at this school. You'll notice the firewood that they collected because they need the firewood in order to cook. And what happens is the children aren't given homework because they usually don't have pens or pencils or paper at home, nor do they have light. So their homework each day is to bring in some sticks or branches for the firewood and a can filled with water that they can get by walking a couple of miles to this local place. Again, very sad. But again, they do not complain about this. This is just what their life is. This is a picture of inside where she's cooking for those 200 people. Needless to say, she's doing it all morning long. And if you think about it being 90 degrees outside and how hot it is inside of this little hut while she's cooking the porridge and whatever else she's doing for the orphans. And this little girl over here is just doing the dishes for all of these children. Think about what we did in Thanksgiving. You know, we were cooking for 15, 20, 30 people and we were all complaining about it. Can you imagine what this person has to go through here with cooking for 250 orphans every single day, twice a day? Now again, this is just more faces of the AIDS orphans, and they're beautiful children. They have so much to offer the world, and it kills me that they aren't afforded the opportunities that most of the rest of us are in the United States. Now, when we were there, we also, each of the volunteers brought 50 pounds of clothing that were given out to all of the orphans at the school. We did have to deal with some theft by the teachers. Unfortunately, they were affected, but for the most part, we were able to give out the majority of the clothes to the orphans, and you can see how tickled pink they are to be wearing these clothes and, you know, showing them off to the camera. They were just so appreciative. It was wonderful. Now this little girl, my little pointer isn't working, here we go. This little girl I had met the first day we came to town, and I saw her standing there. She's selectively mute, which means she rarely talks, only to one or two people. And if you'll notice that she's got this bandage on her arm, what I had seen when we first got off the bus was the fact that she had flies inside of her arm because it was a huge open sore. It looked like she had gangrene in it. And it was just horrific. When I asked what had happened, apparently she was abused in the home that she was living in. She's an AIDS orphan, and she just goes from hut to hut. And the man of the hut there, I guess, was upset with her for whatever reason, and so he took a piece of hot coal and seared her skin down pretty much to the bone, and nothing was done for her, and so that's why it got so badly infected. And then when I asked the teacher for a first aid kit so I could, you know, put some bacitracin or something else on it, they had none. 650 children at the school, not one first aid kit. They said that they had bought a couple in the past, but that they were stolen, so they didn't bother to do it now. And, you know, so we had to travel about 20 or 30 miles to go to a medical center to have her treated for that. And I don't know whatever happened after that because, you know, who knows if anybody helped her to continue to take care of it. We actually tried to adopt her, my husband and I, but we were told that because of cultural reasons and the amount of money that we would have to pay in bribes and not even be assured that we would be able to adopt her, we weren't able to pursue it. Hope and joy. So you think that given all the poverty and the hardships that, you know, they'd always be sad. And I know my son was so trepidatious about going down there because he thought that everybody was just going to be glum all day long, every single day. But that truly wasn't the case. Despite all their struggles, they were very happy children in their hearts. And they found any excuse to smile, to dance, to have fun, to show their appreciation. So they sang songs. They put on plays for us. They wrote us letters. They made us bead necklaces from dried corn in a nearby pasture. It was wonderful. We had such a great time with them. Now I'm going to make you work for another minute. Look at this little thing here. They're playing soccer, and this is what they do for about 4 or 5 hours a day, again in the blazing heat, most without shoes. Can anybody guess what that soccer ball is made of? Thank you, Valencia. Yes, we are so privileged. And yes, we do need to be much less materialistic. Okay, so we've got one guess of rice. Okay. Coconut, a shirt. I'm going to bet that nobody guesses it because I didn't even know what it was when I first looked at it. We'll wait for Frederick. Animal hide? No. No more guesses? It's actually made, oh, hold on. Corn, nope. It's made of plastic bags. They take about 100 plastic bags and tie it up with a piece of twine, and they use that as their soccer ball. And I have to say that's beyond ingenious because it lasts a long, long time. And one of the, well, obviously they can't afford a soccer ball, but the other thing is there's so many rocks and everything like that that it's hard to keep a soccer ball. We did bring them a bunch of soccer balls, though. But what was really funny was that my son considered himself a soccer star. He was on the soccer team in high school and everything, and he was all excited about teaching, quote unquote, these kids how to play soccer the right way. And when we went down there, we saw that these students were better than any Division I team in college in the entire United States. They would play for 4 or 5 hours without breaking a sweat, again, without shoes. And after about 2.5 hours in the blazing sun, my son started begging me to let him go inside and paint or pour cement or something like that because he just couldn't take doing all of this fun stuff in the sun. It was too much for him. Now, excuse my voice, just getting over a cold. Operation Orphans International, which is the organization we partnered with that summer in Kenya that I was telling you about, they began an enormously successful program that feeds hundreds of orphans at this school, mostly AIDS orphans, like I was saying earlier. They feed them porridge every single morning. Now, previously, these children hardly ever came to school, and when they did, they had trouble concentrating because they were so incredibly hungry. And since this program was instituted, there's been near perfect attendance. And to the point where many children from other schools have heard about this porridge program, and they were willing to walk up to 5 to 6 miles a day from home just to go to this particular school. To me, it's amazing that a meal that costs only about 35 cents, if that, can make all the difference in learning and a person's health. I mean, these kids could not wait to get to school so that they could have their bowl of porridge. Now, we didn't want to just go down there and refurbish the school. We wanted them to actually be part of the process so that they could feel some ownership and pride, even though it took twice as long and it didn't look so hot in the end. But it was actually very, very fun. And in addition, we collaborated with the schools in terms of finding out what their needs were, getting their input on how we could be of service, asking what they could contribute, at least partially, because we wanted them to really feel like it was their project. So it was really a joint effort. I will say, though, that as a New Yorker, I always want things done right away and efficiently. And when we got down there, it was actually very funny. I expected to be seeing all sorts of cans of paint and paint brushes and everything else like that all set up for us because we Americans were going down there to help them build this schoolroom. Well, what happened was nothing was there. Finally, they did get the paint, but in terms of paint brushes, they said to us, oh, we can go gather some sticks in the pasture or the woods and maybe tie some corn husks around them, and we can use that for paint brushes. And then when I said, okay, well, what about ladders to get up top? A lot of them went into the woods and collected a bunch of big branches and said that they could put together a ladder just by hammering a couple of nails inside of those branches and then create 3 or 4 steps. So to me, it was just amazing that we don't even think of these things. If, you know, I want to paint my room, I'll go to Home Depot, get a ladder, get the paints, get the paintbrushes, and then just do it right then and there. And that wasn't the case here. Now, of course, you see the paintbrushes. We did insist on going down to a store and purchasing the paintbrushes because their idea of using corn husks and sticks just wasn't going to cut it. But I just thought that was an interesting side note. I had brought a journal with me as well as a number of colored pencils so that I could have them draw about their hopes and dreams. Of course, what I didn't foresee was, here's a note, love the human ingenuity. Yeah, they are incredibly resourceful. What I didn't foresee was that everybody was going to be drawing homes and families because most of them are orphans and most of them didn't have a home. So I asked them to broaden it and then draw anything that they wanted. And of course, like this journal was the big thing for the entire month we were there. Everybody wanted to draw on the journal. And of course, Obama is their pride and joy and in their mind, their gift to the United States, in addition to their savior. So this picture on the left here is their rendition of the Obama White House, which I thought was really neat. Now, most often, being educated through high school is nothing but a dream for the Kenyans. Anthony, the man over here, is the one that my husband sponsored from high school through college, and now he's getting his doctorate. When he was younger, his parents literally had to sell the roof of their shack so that he could pay the fees to attend elementary school. Now, thankfully, the government does pay for elementary school, but people have to pay for middle school and high school. Now, the three students pictured here obviously are wearing some of the clothes that we brought from the United States. But unless they're sponsored, they can't go to high school either. And the fees, again, are around $200, which is the annual income for most people. So very often they have to depend on the generosity of people that they don't even know in order to continue school. What's interesting and sad is that in the United States, here it's a given and it's actually a law to go to school. For them, it's just usually a pipe dream. Now, on this particular day, these three students were their top students, and they were being presented to the group of volunteers so that they could be potentially sponsored by one or more of them at a cost of $200 a year. It was just kind of awkward, though. I can't even imagine putting my son up on, some sort of a stage and saying, he's a really nice guy and he's smart. Can somebody please sponsor him for $200? It's heartbreaking that they have to do that. Now, as a cultural side note, these three very kind, very smart, and very generous children were from the Lahuya tribe. That week, they had all been circumcised, which is a tradition in Kenya for this particular tribe. At the age of 13, every boy in the village has to go to the village center and be circumcised in front of the entire village. They are not allowed to cry, and there's obviously, nothing to ease the pain. And if they do cry, they have to pay a fine of sheep, goats, or cows, which I just thought was so amazing. And I have to tell you, they were so excited that they did not cry. They were incredibly proud, and they absolutely loved that tradition. They were dreading it ahead of time, though, of course. There's a huge entrepreneurial spirit in Kenya, as is the case in many developing countries, but they depend on tourists, and tourism has dropped off significantly in the past 5 years or so in Kenya due to the riots and the political and tribal violence. And that's had a very devastating impact on the very poor economy to begin with. And like I said earlier, 40% of the people in Kenya are unemployed. These women here on the left are making pottery. I'm always amazed at what they can do. And then here on the right, you'll see the pot that she did make a couple days previous to that. She's about to put it on her head. She has these little rags that she puts on her head, and she can walk for miles with that on her head. It's amazing to me. They have perfect posture, too, because they have to in order to walk around with these pots on their head. The sad thing is these incredibly talented women hardly get to sell any of their pottery because, again, the economy is so poor and there are very few tourists except those going on the safaris, which I'll talk about in a little while. Here's some more pottery. Jewelry making, again, is also big in Kenya. These two men are my husband's former students, again, when he was in the Peace Corps. They're incredibly talented, and the jewelry is absolutely exquisite. But again, there was no market, so they just came and they tried to sell to the 10 or 12 volunteers that were there. So what I did was I hooked them up with a wonderful organization called 10,000 Villages, which hopefully some of you know about. It's one of the world's largest fair trade organizations. They sell jewelry and other fair trade merchandise. And now these two are doing fairly well because they're local artisans and they're selling internationally, and they don't have to work in a sweatshop to do so. Now, we're fortunate enough to go on safaris when we are in Kenya, but sadly, even though the safaris are incredibly close to where so many people live in Kenya, the vast majority do not ever get to see anything on a safari, much less these types of animals. These are pictures that my husband took when we were there. They're hippos and elephants. It saddens me to know that people from across the world can see these things and they can't, and it's just in their backyard. These are wildebeests, thousands of them doing a crossing where it's filled with crocodiles. So as you can imagine, we were all very trepidatious watching to see if one of them was going to be taken down by an alligator. Now, I don't know if many of you have ever heard of Wangari Maathai. Hopefully some of you have. She's a Kenyan environmentalist and political activist who died in the last 2 years. She's also the first African woman to receive the Nobel Peace Prize for her contribution to sustainable development, democracy, women's rights, and peace. She founded what is known as the Green Belt Movement, which is an environmental NGO focused on the planting of trees, environmental conservation, and women's rights. The countryside in Kenya had been devoid of trees for years and still is due to the massive deforestation for wood. And thanks to Wangari's efforts, millions of trees, not only in Kenya, but throughout Africa, have been planted. And this is just some of them that have grown up since then. There's a lot more all over the countryside. It's amazing that something as simple and inexpensive as planting a tree sapling can have such an enormous long-term effect on the environment, the economy, health, wildlife, and so many other areas. So now I'm going to make you all work again. We've talked about poverty and all sorts of other problems around the world. I want to know what you think some of the main causes of poverty and the injustices that I've described are caused by. Just a couple of words, if you think it's, economics, geographic stuff, or whatever. Greed, okay. Or greed, wow, greed is a big one. Huh, okay. Poor leadership, good answers. Yes, I could not agree more with the lack of educational opportunity. Greed. Misuse, oh, I like that, misuse of resources. Pride, that's an interesting one. Lack of water. Geographic isolation due to seasonal weather. That's a huge one. Countries like Bolivia definitely suffer from that. Okay, so I was just, any others? Okay, these are, oh, it's not coming up right. That's odd. Okay, well it was all nice and flush against the left side when I was doing it. But anyway, see, these are just some of the interconnected causes of poverty. Education or lack thereof, economic issues, geography, which is what one of you had said, climate, values, intolerance, war. I think I got almost everything that you all said. Gender inequality. I don't think anybody noted that one. Religious conflicts, health pandemics, agricultural issues, discrimination, misuse of natural resources, which I think one of you said, the environment, energy sources, and overpopulation. It's really important to note that the causes are all interconnected. It's not just one thing. There's usually a multitude of areas that combine, excuse me, my voice, that combine in order to promote poverty and these other injustices. Oops, hold on. Okay. Now, the root causes of all problems as well as the solutions, like I said, are all interconnected, and none of them can be taken in isolation. That's why I love the preamble to the Earth Charter, which is my charter for life, and I'll be talking about in a minute or two, which reads, to move forward, we recognize that in the midst of a magnificent diversity of cultures and life norms, we are one human family and one Earth community with a common destiny. Our environmental, economic, political, social, and spiritual challenges are interconnected, and together we must forge inclusive solutions. Solutions, when implemented, they typically have a ripple effect, helping to alleviate other problems as well. So for instance, and this is a major oversimplification, basic education would lead to an understanding of our rights, which could lead to understanding of how the economy works and potential voting power. That could lead to gender equality, which leads to political systems taking into account the needs of everyone, which could lead to investment in health, agriculture, science, infrastructure, technology, and alternative resources, which leads to the promotion of sustainability, and so on. So again, this is a major oversimplification, but all problems and all solutions truly are interconnected, and they have an effect that builds upon one another. So now we come to the solutions portion of the presentation. People call me Solution Sue, so I want to live up to my name. We'll be discussing some short and long-term solutions, as well as some super easy things that you can do with just the click of the mouse, which is what I'll start with. I think I had two more. Yes, okay. So, and hopefully some of you have heard of these sites. The Hunger site, I love. When you shop at the Hunger site store, each item that you buy funds at least 25 cups of food to the world's hungry at no extra cost to the person looking at the site. Additionally, if you don't want to purchase anything, you can just simply click on a link there, and a small amount of money is automatically donated to a specific charity. 10,000 Villages, I told you about earlier, that's the organization that I hooked those jewelry makers up with a couple years ago. I buy all my jewelry and so many of my gifts there. It's one of the world's largest fair trade organizations, and it's a founding member of the World Trade Organization. What they do is help to improve the livelihood of tens of thousands of disadvantaged artisans all over the world, particularly in developing countries, who won't have to endure the horrid conditions of sweatshops and get to sell their wares at fair trade prices. So it's a wonderful organization. Then there's Heifer, again, one of my other favorite nonprofit organizations. They're dedicated to ending hunger and injustices around the world. And it does that by providing livestock, training, and environmentally sound agriculture and giving those livestock to people in need. What's also nice is that the recipients have to agree to pass on the gift to one or more of their animals to others in need, sort of creating like a pay it forward type of scenario. So if we give them several goats, when those goats have little babies, I forget what baby goats are called, they have to give them to some neighbors who then agree to raise them and then give their offspring to other people, and so on. It's really one of my favorite organizations, and I buy shares of livestock, bees, and trees from Heifer all the time and send their In Honor of You cards to everyone for holidays, birthdays, memorials, and things like that. Then there's freerice.com, which asks basically for definitions of SAT type words, and for every answer that you give that's correct, they give 10 grains of rice to the World Food Program to help end hunger. Tom's Shoes, hopefully a lot of you have heard of them. I'm actually wearing them right now. When you buy a pair of their shoes, another pair is given for free to a child in need in a developing country. It started off in Argentina, and now it's all over the world, particularly in Africa. And what's also nice is that they're made of sustainable materials as well, such as hemp, plastic bottles, and so on. And I know you're thinking, hemp and plastic bottles, that can't be very comfortable, but it actually really is. Then this Third World Farmer, which is a consciousness-raising game that I play with my students at PACE. It's an online game that simulates some of the real-world mechanisms that cause and sustain poverty in the developing countries. And in the game, the player gets to manage an African farm and is confronted with a lot of difficult choices that poverty and conflict can cause. And unfortunately, it doesn't usually have a happy ending, but it does help to consciousness raise. And then one that I just learned about the other day is called From War to Peace. And I learned about it because somebody gave it to me for a birthday present. They take copper from disarmed and recycled nuclear weapons, and they make jewelry and other accessories out of it. So that's one of my new favorite places to buy things. So I mean, again, these don't solve real problems, but they can help to make a small difference. Now, of course, there's a lot of small-scale solutions as well, in addition to the click of the mouse type of activities. In my view, I feel like why be overwhelmed with all the injustices around the world when we can just take the opportunity in our everyday lives to promote, to embrace, recognize, honor, ensure, support, strengthen, prevent, solve, and enlighten others. So I won't go into all the things that you can do because you probably know most of them, but some of them are purchases. Like I was saying before, if we can buy organic or if we can buy fair trade, that's always very helpful. Volunteer work, donations, whether they're physical or monetary, the empowerment of others, cross-cultural cross-cultural understanding and experiences, different types of support, whether it's political, social, personal, or spiritual, different consciousness-raising efforts, your lifestyle. For instance, you can eat organic and local foods. You can lighten your carbon footprint. Hopefully, Dr. Butel has taught you how to do that in that wonderful course. Support global and local efforts, and so on. In my mind, everything we do, no matter how small it is, can make a real difference in the lives of others, whether directly or indirectly. So these are some small-scale solutions. There's a lot of large-scale solutions, but before I go into that slide, I want to hear from you to what you think some of the solutions could be that are more that are larger scale and that we can't just do alone. Maybe type in on the little box. I know you all have great ideas about what we can do to make a difference. Consume less, yes. Share wealth. Other ideas? I'm hoping to get at least 10. Sponsor the education of children, yes. And if any of you are interested in doing that, I will be happy to hook you up with Operation Orphans International or any other wonderful empowerment type of organization that does that. Education to me is the key to everything. Teach sustainability, yes. So what you're learning in Dr. Butel's class, definitely consciousness raise with others. Raise awareness, educate others. Presentations, thank you. Yes, we do need to get this information out. That's why I speak about these sorts of things to anybody who will listen as well as those who won't listen to me. Any other ideas as to what we can do on a large scale? Then I'll give you the things that I came up with. Not that it's everything, but live and work and divert. Oh, yes. In my mind, every single student at any college and any person in the world actually should go abroad because that's the best way to understand the issues and then try to effectuate change. Create partnerships, yes, both local and global. Get involved in interagency network for education. Oh, yes. Thank you, Dr. Nolan. Okay, so thank you for sharing your ideas. Here are some of mine. I really feel strongly that we need globally to invest in infrastructure, clean water, sanitation, healthcare, education, agriculture, global science, and alternative energy sources. Interestingly, when we were in Kenya and when I was in most of the Latin American countries, they didn't even have real roads. So flat tires were just a norm, and they didn't have any kind of vehicle to take garbage away. So throughout Kenya, wherever I was going, except in the safari parks, there were just fires all over the place because people were just lighting fire to their debris and garbage, and that was their way of getting rid of it. And so it made the entire country seem like it just smelled so horrible, and it seemed so unhealthy. Well, because it was unhealthy. So those are the investment issues. I also firmly believe that we need to promote sustainable development, promote technology, particularly in the developing world. Believe it or not, technology can foster equality. Cell phones are probably one of the most effective advancements in history to lift people out of poverty. Microfinancing is huge. The Grameen Bank, hopefully some of you are familiar with that. Nonviolent resistance, I'm a big proponent of that. Family planning, grassroots movements that we can hopefully engage in both here and abroad. Promote voting rights and promote social entrepreneurship both here in the United States and in other countries. Those are just some of the millions of large-scale solutions. In my mind, though, the most important one is education, because if we can educate people about things, all of the rest of this can fall into place. And it's also important to emphasize that the cost of prevention of these problems is so much cheaper than the treatment of the problem. So if you take something as small as mosquito nets, they only cost about $1, but they can save lives and prevent millions of people from getting malaria. The other thing to remember is that talent and intelligence is probably spread very evenly around the planet, but opportunity is not, and that's why I feel like it's incumbent upon us to be the change that we want to see in the world by empowering and supporting others. So what can we do to support and empower others on, these large and small scale solutions? One strategy that I have used is participatory action. And I know it's best known as a research method, which was introduced to me by none other than Dr. Rafanti and Dr. Constance Butel, who has written a wonderful book on it. It's also a strategy to empower others to be the change by including them in the process of identifying the problems as well as identifying and implementing the solutions. It was inspired by Paulo Freire, which hopefully all of you have read about in Dr. Caraway's class. Some of the steps involved, and by the way, this is my favorite way of being the change in the world. I use it on small scale and large scale, and I also use it with my research and did it for my dissertation. And the steps involved are to define a set of fundamental concerns, problems, or issues that are identified by the researcher, the facilitator, the change agent, as well as members of a specific community in order to obtain a deeper understanding of those concerns. Then those directly affected by those issues are invited to participate in whatever the initiative or study is. And then through dialogue and reflection, the participants identify and analyze the challenges, the problems and needs, and at the same time they generate concrete ways to deal with and or solve them. Then the facilitator or the researcher and the participants together put together an action plan and then hopefully effectuate the desired changes. And then the last step is to reflect on those solutions, assess them, and then revise them as needed. Have many of you heard about the PAR as a research tool? Hopefully all of you, because T. Harris is typing. Creswell, I think, writes about it in his wonderful book. Okay, in terms of the benefits of participatory action types of initiatives, they're practical outcomes, and they have positive social change, ideally. They're collaborative, so those most affected by the problem are actually part of the solution, which I love. It's not that we're imposing solutions on somebody else, because very often, actually most often, we don't always know what the local people want or need, and we don't know the cultural values and things like that unless they're considered. And that leads me to the considering many different viewpoints. It's a very empowering way of moving the locus of control to the community and the people who are suffering from the problems. It's also a very open, active, and meaningful solutions-oriented type of initiative, and it provides a voice to the participants and hopefully changes their lives and brings about different practices and mindsets. I'm the biggest proponent of this. I tell it to everybody I can. Now, probably the biggest example that I can think of in terms of solutions of participatory action is the Earth Charter, and I had mentioned them earlier. I'm sure probably not many of you have heard of it, but basically it's a declaration of fundamental ethical principles for building a just, sustainable, and peaceful global society. The drafting of the Earth Charter involved the most inclusive participatory process ever associated with the creation of an international declaration. And currently it's endorsed by over 4,500 organizations, many governments and international organizations, and countless individuals. I encourage you after this session to go to their website and see what it is they do, because it's just phenomenal. But more than that, what I love about the Earth Charter is it provides guidelines that are accompanied by the global initiatives to promote peace, justice, and sustainability throughout the entire world. And the initiatives are geared towards solving these interconnected injustices that we've been talking about this entire time. And they have four main pillars, which are noted here: respect and community and care for the community of life, ecological integrity, social and economic justice, and democracy, nonviolence, and peace. I love the Earth Charter. Another example of participatory action to a slightly lesser degree is the Millennium Development Goals, the MDGs, and again, I encourage you all to look at this website as well. These are 8 international development goals that were established by all participating countries in the UN in 2000, and what they do is promote equity, freedom, dignity, justice, and peace around the world. And the goals weren't just goals that were sitting around. They actually had a comprehensive action plan for each one of them, including the commitment to reduce poverty and social inclusion, achieve universal primary education, promote gender equality and empower women, reduce child mortality, improve maternal health, combat HIV, AIDS, and tuberculosis, ensure environmental sustainability, and then partner for development. Somebody earlier talked about partnering for development. I can't remember who it was, but I applaud whoever that was who said it. Now, each country involved in the development of the goals and the accompanying action plans with the UN, as well as over 50 nonprofit organizations from all over the world, are working together to meet the needs of these goals. And again, all problems and solutions that are listed here are interconnected and need to be addressed using a systems approach. I'm hoping that a number of you learned from Dr. Butow's class about using systems approach, because that's so, so important. Now, in several parts of Africa, there's a greeting known as Ubuntu, which literally means I see you. But the deeper meaning behind this word is the concept of togetherness and community, and that every single person is an integral part of humanity. So whether we physically see people or not, in terms of promoting justice, the right thing to do is to take small steps toward making a difference in the lives of others who are part of this interconnected community. And that's why Ubuntu is one of my favorite words in Swahili and all the other languages that it's used in. So I challenge each of you to be the change that you want to see in the world. And what I would love to hear now from you is maybe some things that you've been doing on a small or large scale to be the change. So if a couple of you would type in some of those things, because I like to celebrate successes and learn from other people, and I'm curious to see what other people are doing. And it doesn't have to be necessarily about poverty or injustices that I've been talking about. It could be anything. It could be working with students with disabilities or anything like that. So I'm really excited to hear what you all have to say. And then I'll take questions.